It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey there, everybody. It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name's Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey, gang.
Les Webster.
Hello, all.
And Liz Newman.
Hello, everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Great.
Beautiful.
Tremendous.
Boy, you were so convincing, Mike. You were so convincing.
Embalmed.
Mm-hmm. Hope everybody out there is doing okay. So what's been going on in your quarter of the galaxy? Ducks and runs for cover.
15 minutes, I know my gut.
15 seconds. Go.
Edit here.
You're right.
No, I'm kidding.
Edit now.
I don't have a lot, honestly. I'm trying to think. There's just been so much bullshit happening that I can't really pick one thing out. As I was saying before show, I've been on a Andy Griffith kick here lately. I don't know why.
Why not?
While I was sick, it came on at the right times, in the morning and in the evening. So, but I've noticed something really weird. There's two different channels that it'll come on if you guys are ever curious about this. TV Land plays it, and then Up plays it. I think it's called Up, but they're both channels that specialize in like older TV, black and white, some color, but mostly black and white. I've watched the first 4 seasons of Andy Griffith now. I don't know how many times, but once they get to season 5, they cut it off and they go right back to season 1. So I looked it up because I'm like, what the hell? Did something happen? Something happened. They changed it to color. And for some reason, they won't play the color ones. So I've had to hit, is it Peacock?
Could be.
I think it's Peacock that plays the newer, it's not too new, but yeah, the later episodes of Andy Griffith. So
that's weird.
And then I finally sat down and watched 1883 with Phil. Mm-hmm. I think we've talked about this.
Phil was in that? Cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, actually, he knows the guy or something that's in there. And it's weird because
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, this guy does contract work here in Dallas, but he also does fill-ins for movies and things like that. So I guess that's the perk of being a contractor is you can make your own schedule and stuff. But that's kind of what got him turned over to it's Yellowstone that he knows the guy. And 1883 is a prequel of that. Mm-hmm. And I haven't watched any of Yellowstone yet, but I did, like I said, I did start watching the 1883, and I really like it. Now, I'm the kind of person, I like older TV. I like Gunsmoke. I like Bonanza, Little House on the Prairie. And this
you pretty much just like everything except for what we suggest. I mean,
Right. Well, between a certain time period, if you take Little House on the Prairie and mix it with Bonanza, you have 1883. This is kind of the tale of people wanting to own land, homestead rights, and this during that time and everything else, and them making it across the prairie for a new life. And this family that's making it across the prairie is the family of the people of Yellowstone. So you kind of see what background they came from, Um, it pretty interesting. There's been a lot of things that come up that's kind of like, wow, I don't know, I don't know how I would handle that, you know. But if you like Western homesteader type thing, you would definitely enjoy 1883. Like I said, I Yellowstone seems to have found its footing. I think it's in its fifth season now, and it really didn't find its audience until season 4. I don't know what happened. I know for me, I started seeing it a lot on social media, so I don't know if maybe Netflix got a hold of it and played the first 3 seasons, because sometimes that happens, you know. And but they have confirmed that Kevin Costner will continue. I think there's a season 6 coming up, but he's also making a movie that's going to be like a Western kind of thing. But not only is he going to be acting in this, he's also Pug. She's sitting here growling at me. He's also going
Apparently
to
she's not a Yellowstone fan.
not at all.
Or a Costner fan.
She
One
hates
or the other.
Costner.
I could be growling for that. If that's what the prerequisite is.
Or hungry.
But yeah, so he's supposed to be doing that movie too. I don't think it ties into, other than theme, I don't think it has anything to do with Yellowstone or 1883 though. So you don't have to watch those to watch the new movie coming out.
Apparently we're just starting to have a little Western resurgence here.
Yeah.
I was one mentioned about us having a friend on 1883. Lars Ebersol was set costumer on the show.
Ah,
Mhm.
that's cool.
Yeah. So.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
I said, yeah, I'm sorry I took so long to watch it. But I think it's still in its first season. It is one of those series that I can't even tell you. I watch it on Amazon because all of my channel subscriptions are through them. I don't know if it's Peacock or Paramount. There's kind of a
Paramount.
yeah, and I think Yellowstone's on the other one, because it's kind of weird the way it's set up right now, because like I said, Yellowstone took a while to find its footing with its audience, and it had streaming deals with Peacock, I think it was. And now that Paramount's kind of taking off with their streaming channel, and so is this TV show, I think they're going to try and get it all back over there. But right now it's kind of like we had a deal with them. They helped us get over the hump, you know, so.
Right. Hopefully it wasn't a super long deal.
Right. Hopefully. But there was something else. Netflix had to pull, was it Netflix? Netflix had to pull the Peanuts movie. And, you know, Google pulls up some really weird shit for me to read sometimes, you know. But people had noticed that it just kind of like disappeared overnight and they didn't know why. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird, because Netflix is usually pretty good about telling you this is coming and this is going, you know. Or no, it was Disney Plus. It just disappeared. Well, the very next freaking day, I'm watching cartoons with the baby, and guess what comes on Nickelodeon? The Peanut movie. So it's like, that's why they pulled it real quick, because they had a contract agreement probably with Nickelodeon, and if Nickelodeon's trying to get people over here to watch it, we don't want you playing it over here too, you know. So, but it's kind of weird they didn't announce it was leaving, kind of thing. But I don't know if Disney does that now that I've got my streaming channel right. I don't think they tell you what's leaving, because it's Disney. It shouldn't be leaving.
Right. Disney doesn't share anything.
Right. So it's kind of weird that this they did. But doesn't Apple, we ran into this problem at Thanksgiving time. Apple owns a lot of the Peanut stuff too. Does Disney own
Apple is at least licensed to show it, whether they own it or not.
Yeah, well, they own it right now.
Well, they're licensed right now.
The license, right?
Somebody owns the license, and they currently have a deal with Apple to show the stuff.
Yeah, exclusively.
Right, because that's how Apple rolls too. But
yeah.
Whatever.
So yeah, it's a pretty interesting, but that's about all I've done.
Mm-hmm. Sure it is.
Yeah. But one other thing,
Damn.
I actually,
Just
Mike,
one more thing.
this was baiting you to get you to segue into your thing.
Mm-hmm.
On our Discord channel, I'll plug it now. If you haven't followed us, go over there and follow us. We have a lot of fun and a lot of interesting things posted over there. Thomas posted an article, I think today, so you guys won't see it today. You'll see it next week. Well, you can see it today.
Well, you see it today because.
Anyways, yeah.
Time's tricky.
Lord of the Rings, their rights are up for sale right now.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? What do you think about Hollywood getting a hold of Lord of the Rings?
I honestly suspect that they're going to be very careful about who they sell it to.
You think they will?
Yes, and I think that I think that whatever happens, the Tolkien estate is still going to retain a lot of the rights and a lot of control over things because that's the way they've always been.
Yeah.
So I think you'll see a lot of the same stuff, but I think you'll see a different label on it in the credits. I don't think it's going to change much.
You don't?
Mm-mm.
I was kind of scared.
And what I read said it was really just the game rights.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking it was movie and game rights is what I thought I saw.
I saw
movie
game.
too.
I saw the word game in there. I didn't
Yeah.
read it real carefully, but
I saw Hollywood.
I think part of the
Like,
weirdness is that there was a whole bunch of noise about Amazon making a new Lord of the Rings game, which fell apart somehow. I wonder if this is a side effect of that.
Probably.
Well, I think they were making a game to go along with the series that they were doing. And see, and I was kind of curious about that too. If Amazon is doing this new Lord of the Rings series, I'm sure they're not too happy right now about them shopping the rights out.
Right.
Well, they're probably not happy, but you know what? The Tolkien estate can do whatever the hell they want to do.
Right. Yeah.
Right. If they want to play ball with the Tolkien estate, then they're going to just put up with whatever happens.
Yeah. Good luck with all that.
Yeah.
So do you think that, well, if it is movies and games, do you think they'll just oversaturate us with it, or?
No, I don't think.
No?
I don't think the estate will let that happen.
Cool.
Yeah. I think you're right, Mike.
That's what I was worried about. Is it getting what I call bastardized? You know, or it just goes along so far to where you just don't even recognize it anymore.
Oh, right. And that has happened a lot of times to a lot of different properties. But as long as there is a Tolkien estate, I think they'll keep it pretty tightly clamped.
Cool.
Yeah, The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit film and gaming rights up for sale is the actual headline. So, yeah.
Maybe somebody's starting to think reboot, which I think is an absolutely terrible idea, of course.
I'm not schooled on the books, but I think that Jackson did a really good job with what he did, you know?
And a lot of people agree with you. I mean, some people don't, mind you, but a lot of people agree with you. I mean, honestly, it's sold billions and billions of dollars worth of tickets, so it's hard to argue with that. But yeah, if I was going to say I'd love to see something, it would be a real adaptation of the Hobbit book. Because that is not what we got.
Yeah.
We got a lot of extraneous stuff that, I mean, some was real and some was imagined, and it was kind of a mess. It was New Line saying, okay, Peter Jackson, it's been 10 years, do it again.
Yeah.
And
make magic happen.
Right. This is what you have to work with, which is not a cohesive book. Honestly, it's not. We want you to do this with the Hobbit, but we want you to do it the way you did the Lord of the Rings. Well, the difference between the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings in the books is dramatic. The Hobbit is a 250-page book aimed at best YA. The Lord of the Rings is is a 1,200-page monstrosity, which is this huge epic story with all this great heroic stuff going on. They're very different stories.
Yeah.
Turning one to the other is a bad idea. So I think it would be interesting to see a cute little hour and a half long Hobbit movie that's the real story from The Hobbit, and not. I mean, don't get me wrong. I appreciate and understand the scope of what they were doing and where some of that stuff came from, but then they started inventing shit to put in it and make it try to make it quote unquote interesting, and it didn't work.
Yeah. And try to make it into 3 movies.
Right.
That's the main thing.
If they had left the Hobbit part out of it, it wouldn't have been that bad. Which may sound weird, but it's entirely possible to do. There are a lot of other bits and pieces of stuff that he wrote and created that would make interesting movies of that style. The Hobbit was not one of them. It's a different animal.
Yeah.
Anyway, my opinion.
That's cool though. Yeah, that's all I had.
Cool. I wish I did that much, but I usually don't do that much.
Just in time, Liz.
Yeah, I had to hit that mark.
Slid it into home at just the right time. Anyway, so the thing I plan on talking about is I watched a movie, and it's not one of the movies that's like I talked last week about a movie that is one of those movies that I should have seen a long time ago. This is a movie that has been on my radar for a little while, and I finally got around to it, but it's not on that scale at all. I finally watched Dark Star.
Oh.
John Carpenter's first
film.
Studio movie or feature film, first released film. It's from 1974, and it is I overuse the word interesting, and I'm aware of this. It is an interesting take for sure on basically a space movie, which is not surprising given that he co-wrote it with Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien a few years later. Not to mention several other sci-fi movies. I am not surprised that O'Bannon did not choose to continue his acting career. I don't remember ever seeing any of the rest of these people in any movies ever either. But this was also born out of film school, basically.
Yeah.
This is a movie that they made when they were students at USC. Which, I mean, for that, it's cool. It's fine. It's good. It's a movie. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, sort of. It works. I don't think it was a bad movie. I'm not sure I got it, but that's okay too. Well, there's a lot of. I mean, it's a Carpenter movie for sure, and especially in the sense that it's like almost funny but almost serious at the same time. It's one of those things that if Carpenter ever tried to make an actual comedy, he'd probably be pretty good at it. But the problem is that he never really tried to make an actual comedy. He just made another type of movie that has a sense of humor to it, even if it's not active. I mean, the most overtly funny movie that I've ever seen of Carpenter's was probably Big Trouble in Little China.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think this is, I definitely can see Dark Star as a precursor to that type of humor. It's the kind of movie that is funny in a really dark way, and it's a movie you watch and say, yeah, that was pretty funny, but you didn't laugh at all. I mean, it was not ha-ha funny. It was weird and awkward funny, because it's basically, at the start of the movie, 3 guys on essentially it's not really an exploration vessel. It's a ship that's flying around the galaxy, blowing up planets. Apparently, out of the kindness of their hearts and based on information that they have about potential life development on these planets or on nearby planets, it's a little fuzzy. But yeah, and it's, I mean, I like it. It's not fantastic. It's not like Oscar worthy. It's not an Oscar worthy movie. But it's entertaining. It's a little, the pacing is a little bit slow, not terribly slow, but a little bit slow. And it's very much a bunch of guys in a tin can type thing. There's not a lot of fancy set work. There's not a lot of, I mean, there's a few special effects here and there, which apparently O'Bannon did, or at least led. And otherwise, it's just, it's just watching these three guys kind of go crazy and what the end result ends up being, with a few cool, interesting twists along the way. So it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't put it high on a list, but put it on a list.
Check that out.
That sounds fair.
It's been so long since I've seen it.
It's on Tubi.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Right, everything's freaking on Tubi just about. But
pretty much.
Yeah.
Cool. No documentaries this week, huh?
I actually, I watched one. I did watch one, but I watched one that you've already talked about, and so I didn't really. I don't know that I have a ton to add to the Smothered documentary, which is on YouTube. It's an interesting story, and it's one of those that I'm sitting here watching it. I'm like, I know I've heard this stuff before, but I'm not sure if it's because I saw it 20 years ago when it came out, or if it was because you talked about it a couple of months ago. So it's entertaining. It's about the Smothers Brothers TV show and how that was. There's a lot of fun background stuff that you never would know otherwise. So that for me, that makes it cool right off the bat. So it's pretty good.
Cool.
Okay, Les?
Excuse me.
What the hell is that?
I had to sneeze.
You've already had your 15 minutes, young lady.
No, you said I had 5 more seconds. That was it.
I say, you could have totally blamed that on the dog, and we couldn't have argued with you.
Right. Taco, damn.
For me, a couple things. The other week we watched the Spectrum series, Joe Pickett, which I recommend for anybody that enjoys mysteries.
Okay.
This week was the opening week of a show from Amazon Prime. This weekend opened with the 8-episode series Reacher.
Oh, yeah. Been seeing stuff on that on Amazon.
Yep.
I'm going to recommend this to the highest. This is currently the highest rated original program that Amazon Prime has ever done. And I can see why. First thing I'm going to tell you is to walk away from the Tom Cruise version of Jack Reacher.
I think a lot of people did that anyway.
Oh, right. Thank God. Because this was so much better. It was believable. Because Reacher in the books is about 6'5" to 6'8". Tom Cruise is about a foot less than either of those. So he really couldn't pull off the stunts that were being done in this new version. And then Gina got online today and found out that season 2 of Reacher has a go.
Cool.
Because when I finished watching Reacher, I wanted another one right then. And unfortunately, they don't do it that way. So I'll have to wait. But if I know it's coming, then the wait will be a lot easier to take.
You know,
I
don't mean to be a dick, but they have books.
Oh, yes. Yes. And
no, I know there's a difference. I'm teasing. But.
Well, the wife has read a lot of them.
Cool.
And there's where I have a problem.
Oh, yeah, that problem. I remember you talking about that before.
As I was discussing before the show, I did have a problem with the wife because she would bring up the differences between the novels and the movie, and all I could do was the Dr. Evil shh all the time.
I'm sure that went over very
yeah,
well.
Which is not a good look.
I was happy to be alive after tackling that part. But the series is really good. And I've got a feeling that it's going to go far. It's going to go well. It's going to do a lot more than just this quick series we're seeing now. This guy played, believe it or not, Raphael in 2 of the Turtles movies.
Oh, wow.
And he is big and strong, and the pictures that my wife found on Facebook convinced our stylist that she needed to watch it too. So
maybe I should look these pictures up.
You may have to look at this.
Tell Gina, hook a girl up.
So, if you get the chance, watch it. It's very, very well done, and it's a good mystery. Doesn't give you whodunit right at the first.
Cool.
It is pretty cool. I've heard good things about it.
Yep, and it's good to hear that they're doing it right this time.
For me, pretty much a lot of the same from last week. Obviously researching for our discussion this month.
Shit. I'm kidding. I did my research.
Yeah, we'll see.
That sounds promising, doesn't it?
Very convincing, I have to say, yes.
Don't you believe it? You talk about Andy Griffith. Sometime over the last couple of months or so, I had the opportunity to watch the first episode of Mayberry RFD, which I knew I had never seen before, or if I had, I didn't remember it. And it was funny because I was watching it and going, oh my God, this is the same damn script as the first episode of Andy Griffith.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was changed a little bit because the whole premise of the episode is, Andy got married, so they were leaving, and Barney was already gone. So, and Opie was going to go spend time with a friend or something. I don't remember right now how they explained him not being there. But, Aunt B has nowhere to be now. So she was going to go live with her sister. And at this time, I don't remember Ken Berry's character's name. Him and his son had just lost their housekeeper. So they're thinking, hey, well, why don't we just ask Aunt B to come live with us? And so she eventually decided she wants to do it. So she moves in with them, but they're on a farm. She's never been on a farm before. So there's all these things that are just going on that just kind of either scare her or this, upset her or that kind of stuff. So she's like, well, I'm just going to leave. And then eventually she was basically talked back in. I'm like, this is the first episode of Andy Griffith.
Yeah.
Because their housekeeper left or got married or something that.
Yeah.
So they didn't have her. So here comes Aunt B, and then Aunt B couldn't do all the things with Opie like the previous housekeeper did. And so he's like, I wish she wasn't here. So she was going to leave. And then Opie, and I'm like, it's literally the same damn script.
Hey, it worked the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Although it was cute because he didn't want her to leave because she can't do nothing.
That's right. You say here so you can teach you these things.
Yeah. She needs me. I don't think I've watched that either. I've heard of it, but I don't think I watched it.
The thing about that show, to me, I ain't gonna speak for anybody else, but one of the things I liked about Andy Griffith, there's all these crazy people, but he's a straight man. He's the one that tries to make sense of it all and all that. Now he's gone, so it's literally the inmates running the asylum, and Ken Berry is no Andy Griffith. I really.
He'd be more of a Barney, wouldn't he?
I don't think he was quite that bad. I've seen bits and pieces of the show. He wasn't incompetent, but he wasn't holding the town together.
So basically, you're watching the show for Floyd and Goober and all the others, and like, I don't know about that.
Right, it's a little too soon for pure nostalgia. I mean, come on. It wasn't that long after the show ended, I don't think. It was a few years, but
it's just like, that was not really the reason why I watched the show. I mean, it was fun. I mean, you could tolerate them, but they're only there for bits and pieces here and there and there. Now you're talking about them being there for 30 minutes. There's a difference. There's a difference between 5 or 10 minutes and then 30 minutes. Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That only worked with Gomer Pyle. Well, Shazam!
Well, see, even Gomer, I couldn't really. I mean, I liked what's his face, the sergeant.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of the same thing. That kind of just.
See, I didn't care for Gomer or his cousin Goober.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't care for him either. They're okay, but like you said, in small doses. I couldn't watch a whole show of just them two.
Yeah. How about you, Les?
I like the Andy Griffith Show. Everything else that followed, I wasn't tuned into. Just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
It's bad enough to lose Otis.
Put down, drunk.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and get into this week's discussion. As you realize, if you listened to last week's episode, we are in our annual comedy month, and this year we are focusing on the Three Stooges that are celebrating their 100th anniversary. Last week we focused on primarily the Curly years. So obviously, this week we will be talking about the Shemp era. Shemp, which we mentioned last week, was actually a part of the Ted Healy and the Stooges. And then he left to pursue a career in Hollywood, and he didn't want to be involved with Healy anymore because of all the stuff that he was doing.
Not surprisingly, Healy wasn't a very nice guy. So yeah.
No, he wasn't. No.
That was the first thing I was going to say, is he was an asshole.
Yeah.
Kind of.
But Shem came back when Curly had a stroke and had to take time away from filming. Shemp came in and said, "I'm only going to be here until Curly gets well," which unfortunately never did happen. So let's talk about Shemp's return to the Stooges.
I hate to say this, he was not my favorite. I don't know. It was. It's almost like there was two Moes, because, Mo was the stern, strict one, and I kind of felt like Shemp was the same way. Maybe they kind of ganged up on Larry. But I found conflicting reports, because I looked into the background. Not only have I been watching the Three Stooges, but I kind of looked into the background of Shemp. Mm-hmm. And they're saying on the Three Stooges website, which is threestooges.com, if anybody's ever curious about that Shemp was in 77 Stooge shorts. But if you go to Wikipedia is saying 73. So I don't know if the 77 stage shorts that they're calling it was the extra 4 that they put together after he died.
Probably.
Okay. Which, after he died, to clear that up, the studio promised 8 more episodes, 4 of which was already filmed. And so they took clips of him from other parts and kind of finagled it together to make the last 4. So they got the complete set of 8 episodes out to everyone.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Nope.
I was just going to say they used a stand-in, and you can tell. I mean, the stand-in was taller, and you never saw the face. Of course, you never saw his face. It was always his back to the camera, and he would either go stage left or go stage right, or he would go away from the camera. It was all that kind of thing. It's very noticeable.
Yeah. And he is called the fake Shemp.
Yeah.
That one of the interesting things I found is that Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, when they work together, when someone has to do a stand-in, they usually say, "Bring in the Shemp" or "Bring in the fake Shemp." So that's like their term now when they work together, which I thought was kind of cute. But yeah, I will say though that when his brother got sick, for one thing, I don't know if we've talked about Mo, but as a sibling, I respect him. From the time that Curly got sick, he took care of him. Everything was taken care of by Mo. But back to Shemp. I respect that he came in because he had worked with him before and everything else, and he kind of took the position of saying, "I'm not taking over this from Curly. I'm not taking his job from him, but I'll be here until he can do the part," which, as we learned last week, he never really got better after that stroke. Yeah. That's mad respect. You could tell the love that was there with these brothers. They may be smacking around on each other and, kind of mean on screen, but you could see the love after all of that. But I will have to say the first thing I pulled up about him was his fear of dogs, and that did not make me very happy at all. At all. And I guess they made a point to saying strange dogs, which every dog's fucking strange. But
wow.
They said that he walked around with a big stick just in case that he ran into a stray dog or strange dog. Now, from what I understand, I didn't hold this against him because the more I got to reading, he had a lot of fears and phobias, which was part of the reason why he quit working with Ted Healy, because Ted Healy was cruel and very mean to him, and they pretty much split ways saying, I don't want to work with him. You know, but looking at his careers in between the Stooges and from when he came back, he actually did pretty well for himself. You know, there was a lot of good name movies that I've recognized, you know. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I guess maybe it was because I liked Curly so much that it was hard for me to take Shemp in. But I didn't grow up with them. So I had the pleasure of being able to watch what I want to watch, you know, and usually it was the Curly ones. Not that Shemp, you know, like I said, he just didn't hit me the way that.
Hit you, huh?
Yeah. Yuck, yuck. But yeah. And originally he thought he was going to be a plumber. So he did a pretty good job for himself.
Managed to avoid that. That's
yeah. But
well, he get to play one.
He did.
Yeah.
Yep. Also, real quick, we are talking about the Three Stooges. So yes, we can talk about Moe and Larry at any point here.
Well, right, but this being Shemp years, I didn't know if you guys just wanted to stick in the show.
We can lead with Shemp, and then we can, I mean, because we kind of actually didn't talk much about Moe and Larry last week, so we probably should squeeze them in here somehow. But
yeah,
I mean, leading off with Shemp is fine, since that's kind of how we're using this how we're breaking this up. So I have a different take on Shemp. And my suggestion for you, Liz, on this is what you have to figure out a way to do is not compare Curly and Shemp.
Yeah.
They are very different performers. They have very different styles.
It's kind of hard, though, when he came in his place. You know, there's three of them, one of them leaves.
And the other way to try to talk yourself out of that is to remember that Curly replaced Shemp.
Yeah.
Because Shemp left in, what was it, 32?
Something like that.
It was not long before the rest of the other guys left also. Because they actually didn't kind of get Curly in until they were starting to shop the Three Stooges as a solo act. But Shemp was there years before Curly was.
Right.
So that if that helps, that's why there was a dynamic.
Cool that even after, you know, all of that he was like, I'm not taking this from my brother.
Sure.
I'm not, you know.
Well, and I mean, part of it was that he didn't want to take it from Curly, but also part of it was he didn't want to screw up his own career, which was working pretty well at the time. He was doing all right. He was in movies. He had a solo act. He was good.
He was.
And he didn't want to lose that either by stepping away and going and doing this 40-week-a-year film schedule. I mean, he ended up doing it anyway, and
for years
it worked out fine. I mean, they got along well, and it was all good. But yeah, for several years.
Yeah. He was there 1946 to 1955.
Right. And like you said,
back.
somewhere in the vicinity of 70 some odd shorts, depending on who's counting. But yeah, and yeah, my whole deal is I won't say always, because sure, when I was a kid, Curly was awesome. I loved Curly. Curly was great. It took me a couple of watches though of some of the Shemp ones to realize, hey, this guy's good too, in a very different way. One of the things you can see when you're, if you can make that disconnect, the Curly versus Shemp thing has always kind of pissed me off, because they're so different. There's just no way to compare them. You can't compare them. Which doesn't stop people from doing it, because it's just because they're not seeing the differences. And celebrating the differences and understanding that some of the shorts that Shemp did were their best. Probably not quite as many, but that's part of a different problem that we probably will get into. But yeah,
you mentioned it. Go ahead.
Yeah, the deal is that one of the things you'll catch is some of Shemp's best moments are him by himself. When he's doing something alone, there's some really funny moments in there. That's not to say he didn't work well with the others. He did, obviously, partly because they had worked together for several years before. But the deal is try not to judge Shemp by comparing him to somebody that he's not, because he's really good. Right. So I find myself enjoying some of his stuff just as much as the Curly stuff, for very different reasons, but just as much.
I want to jump in here real quick. I want to point out something. You talk about the whole Curly versus Shemp. I mean, that's going on already. Could you imagine if Shemp decided, you know what, I need to change my performance to be more like Curly and fit in that mold? Do you know how much hell there would have been and still be?
It wouldn't. The deal is, it wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have worked
in the shorts, and it would have fallen apart after 2 years, and it would have all been over.
Yeah,
that's what would have happened.
Yeah, you're right.
So he had to be himself, which and fortunately he's probably the best in the world at being Shemp, so it all worked out pretty well. But yeah.
For me, when I was younger, I would watch the Shemps, but I didn't have like the excitement or the joy when they would come on. It's like, oh, it's one with Shemp. Okay. When I was younger, but as I got older, I learned to appreciate him more. There's something else that I learned to appreciate, and I kind of briefly talked about last week when I talked about the fact that, okay, here's Mo, the leader, and the one who dishes out the punishment and all that, and then here's Curly, the kid, the innocent that has the heart of gold, but the mind of the brain of a think of something small, whatever.
Toddler.
And then,
child, right?
Child, okay. And then you have Larry there. He kind of jumps in every once in a while and says, hey, take it easy on him or that kind of stuff. But when it gets to Shemp years, Larry's more involved. Larry's more part of the group. He's not the bystander anymore, and that's probably because that was the way everything was. That's how they were doing it before. In the early years before Shemp left and Curly joined. So I've learned to appreciate that, because I think Larry is so underrated of the group.
Larry was a childhood friend, right?
Larry, they actually met Larry. I mean, after the Ted Healy act started, Larry kind of came along in the process of all of that. So not really.
Okay.
They met him as totally professional at first.
Yeah.
That they had brought Larry in because he was a solo performer on his own, and he kind of had worked alongside the Ted Healy act for a little bit, and they brought him in because he was really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean they became friends quickly, but it was definitely, he was not an original part of the act.
Yeah.
He came along a little later.
Cool.
So I have a better appreciation of these films, but because of all that, it's because I've learned to appreciate Shemp for what he brought to the table, and the fact that Larry could be more involved with the act, and so.
Right, in this time frame, you get some really good little solo bits from Larry too.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And Larry's always been one of my favorites, so.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Okay, Les?
I think you've covered the majority of it. Shemp went out and he, like you said, took on more by becoming someone that was more than just a stooge. I remember his part in one of the Thin Man movies, and it had such a Three Stooges look to it. They were trying to celebrate Nicky's birthday, the boy, and Shemp showed up to be part of it, but he rented a child to attend the party. When he left, he took the wrong child, and the mother showed up and swore him up and down. It was so funny. And he'd done stuff similar to the Bowery Boys. So he was more than just a face there for them to slap. He actually was a well-rounded actor, which made him really good, really, really great. I enjoy Shemp. There are some episodes that I think are just tremendous with Shemp. And I think that if our listeners take a look at it, they'll find some of the finest stuff out there also from Mr. Howard. So I'm in on Shemp. I think he's fun. I think he's almost erudite because he doesn't just accept what's being said as gospel. And because of that, he is much more rounded as a person. So it's about what I got.
Yeah, I think you could argue that Curly was more rounded as a person too, but
yeah.
Not picking on anybody.
Really ashamed of yourself there, buddy.
Oh, 100%.
And I guess now for the ugly. In 1955, Shemp went to a boxing match with some of his friends. And on the way home, they were in a taxi cab. And they said he had just got through telling a joke to his friend. And he had leaned back to light a cigar. And he slumped over and died on his friend's lap of a heart attack, burning his leg with a cigar that he had just lit. So tragedy, so unexpected. And to me, it kind of hit on the way they found Curly too, you know? So, but he was 60 years old when he passed away.
Far too young.
Yep. And obviously it sounded like he was in good health and, you know, out laughing and having fun with friends.
He was enjoying life.
Yeah.
Right, literally to the last second.
But, you know, I think when I die, I don't want to know that I'm dying, you know? I would hope that I either pass in my sleep or it happens quickly, you know? I don't want a long, drawn out, everybody's sad kind of death, you know?
Oh, who does? I mean, geez.
Right, but yeah. I think with all the bullshit I've put up with life, I'm at least owed that. God owes me. I have enough points for that, right?
Depends on which denomination you're in as to whether they're keeping score on that sort of thing. But that's a different conversation, really.
Yeah, that's the way I'd want to go out. In my prime, they were still filming at the time, so his career wasn't in a downfall or looking to end anytime soon,
Mm-hmm.
They were still filming, but they were having problems at that point because the budgets were being cut back. I think Mike kind of talked a little bit about this last week. Budgets were cut back, so scripts were reused. Even some footage was reused.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot more stock footage in some of the later ones, and some stuff that they literally just pulled from older films.
Yeah, and the article I was reading, if I find it, I'll post it to you guys. It was showing which ones where the fake Shemp was, which episodes they pulled from, and which stories were reused.
Mm-hmm.
The ones I see here listed here is Rumpus in the Harem, Hot Stuff, Scheming Schemers, and Commotion on the Ocean.
Yep.
Which, funny, if Commotion on the Ocean is one I think of, that was one that they had filmed a version of that earlier. The whole thing with the Russian spy in the microfilm.
Yeah. And they recycled a bunch of those scenes.
Yep.
For that. That was another guy that showed up in several.
Gene Roth.
Yeah. He showed up in a few, and he was pretty good.
He was everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing him in Earth vs. Spider. Remember that one, Les?
Oh yeah.
I did a little research on him not too long ago. He was actually in episode of the first season of Mission Impossible.
Ooh, there you go.
And that was actually one of his last roles, as he decided to retire. And I think he opened up a bar, or he became an owner of a bar, and then died of a hit and run.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That's kind of awful.
Yeah. It's like, I didn't really need to read that. I knew he wasn't with us, but damn.
Yep.
Oh, and one other thing that I found kind of interesting is when I was looking up Shemp, different articles talked about him serving in World War I. Now, I know it was short, and I don't think it's necessary to reveal why he left. But when you go to the Three Stooges website, there's a tab called, We Served. And it talks about all of the USO shows that Ted Healy and all of them did with their act, their Vaudeville act and everything else. But never once did they mention that Shemp served in the Army. And even made a point to say that they was too young for World War I, but too old for World War II, which was definitely not the case. So I thought that, because that's, their website, their a state-run website. So I thought that was kind of weird that it wasn't mentioned, or that it was
kept quiet.
Right. Well, it wasn't even mentioned that the dates were wrong about them being too young and too old to serve in either one.
Right. I mean, Shemp would have been
World War
22.
22.
We entered the U.S. entered World War I in 1917.
Mm-hmm.
Shemp would have been 22 years old.
Yep. So he wouldn't have been too young. That was the age they were drafting, which is actually how he wound up in the Army, as he was drafted.
Mm.
So yeah, I thought that was kind of one of those. Why would they? Yeah. But I don't think I would. They never said how long he was in the Army. So I don't know. It could have been a case he was there for a couple of months and came home, but yeah, to me, if you put the uniform on, you were there. You know, it's a respect thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you served. You may not have
Yep.
served for a long time, but you served.
Did.
Right.
Yeah. And he didn't go home by choice, so yeah. I just thought that was kind of weird.
Yep. Especially when you get into World War II, and it became a really big deal in Hollywood. A lot of stars at the time joined up, just put their careers on hold, and just went and served.
Yeah.
In some capacity or another. I mean, in the military. I mean, some of them were obviously given less combat obvious roles, but some of them weren't. Some of them ended up doing a lot of stuff in there, and it got made a much bigger deal out of it. It got made a bigger deal for World War II. I think. I think there was a lot. I mean, one, we were in it a lot longer, and two, it was a different scenario for sure.
Yep. And I don't think people realize how important the USO shows are or were. I don't know if I assume they still do it, but I know of so. Like when my dad was serving in Germany, he was like, that was a taste of home and was such a morale booster for the guys. And, also it was kind of like, wow, these named people came to see us, He said it was probably, one of the better things he can remember. Not that he was in combat. I just want to say that my dad was in Germany during Vietnam, so he wasn't anywhere close to fighting lines.
Right.
So, but yeah, I kind of applaud people who they don't get paid for that. That's all on their own.
Right. That's all volunteer.
Yeah. You have to get yourself there, and we'll give you a stage. So I applaud all. Bob Hope used to do it too, and I really, that's a real respectful thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep. Which it sounds like that's kind of how the Stooges even came about. I could be wrong, that they did the acts with Ted Healy there. I don't see it on here now. No, it was Larry Moe and Curly that performed and toured with the USO shows.
Right, later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because they that during the World War II was during their
prime,
their time. Yeah, I mean they even did a couple of rip-offs of the war itself.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like every show during that time period has at least one Nazi episode.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
It was kind of the thing to do, and it was usually either satirical or just downright stupid.
Yeah. And I'm sure these things were kind of looked upon like cartoons were at the time. That was used, to kind of morale of the support or the troops, and
for lack of a better word, propaganda.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, because people tend to think of propaganda as being a bad thing. I think an argument can be made that it depends on how you're using it and for what cause.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I mean, they were doing the same stuff on the other side too.
Yeah.
Just not with Bugs Bunny and the Three Stooges.
The Stooges. Yeah.
Right.
Well, didn't James Bond even have a Hitler appearance? No, what was the spy movie we watched that had a Hitler appearance that we were kind of like, whoa?
That was one of the. Oh no, that was the one with. Oh, what was the name of that one? The Alan. What was his name? Steve. Totally blanking.
The Marty Allen.
Marty Allen. Yeah, it was that one. There was a whole scene That was just a Nazi scene in the middle of the late 1960s for no apparent reason. Yeah.
Like
with
in
Harvey
the middle
Korman
of a
in it.
chase or something too. So it was kind of a,
Yeah.
The Last of the Secret Agents.
Yeah, that one.
There you go. Yep. They put that there.
That was a scene that they shot and put in the movie.
Right. They needed an extra 5 minutes, huh?
Sure. They had to find some way to get Harvey Korman in there. I know, we'll do a Nazi scene. What?
We'll even have Hitler.
And then they lose him after the bunker scene.
Yeah, that was she mentioned that, and that was the first place I went. I'm like, we haven't talked about Blazing Saddles yet. What are you talking about? That's not a Stooges movie.
It could be.
Well, it has its moment. There's some clear influences there for sure.
Yeah.
Clear influence.
Which brings us to if you enjoy comedy and you haven't watched The Stooges, you have to see The Roots. And this is clearly the roots of comedy here. Like gold. They weren't the first, but they definitely put a big old footprint.
Well, so much stuff was born out of vaudeville, and The Stooges is just a really good example of some of that. And there's not really a good way to preserve all of that vaudeville stuff, except for places like through the Three Stooges shorts.
Yeah.
Because those guys worked in vaudeville for 10 years, 10, 12 years before they came to do these things. And so this is what that stuff looked like. You've got sets now, and you've got scripts in some cases, and it's somewhat different, but that's where this type of humor came from. And so much stuff came out of that era. Because that was entertainment for a long time, for like a 30-year span or something, maybe even longer. That's what entertainment was back before there was movies, before film was even invented. That's what you did. You went to a live show, and you didn't always know who was going to be doing their act, but you went anyway because that was the entertainment in town.
Or what you were going to see.
Mm-hmm.
They could be singing and dancing, or they could be poking eyeballs.
Mm-hmm. That's where all that came from. That stuff. The deal is the slaps and the eye pokes and all of that stuff. It's fake. They're not actually slapping each other, and they're not. There's sound in the shorts anyway. They're adding sound effects to that stuff after the fact. So Moe's not slapping Larry hard enough to make that much noise on the microphone. They're adding it later.
So it's like wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a show.
It's a show. Honestly, depending on where you go and who you ask, will tell you how much wrestling is real, but ultimately it's a show one way or the other.
There's a difference between wrestling and wrestling, though.
Well, yeah, but forgive my poor pronunciation, but we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Greco-Roman over here.
Right. But things like the Pretty Boys and Junkyard Dog and that kind of stuff, that was wrestling. That was a show you were watching.
Mm-hmm. And there was some athleticism to it, and there was some showmanship to it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Gymnastics, all kinds of shit.
And we keep talking like it's past tense. This shit still goes on.
It still goes on. And it's still popular.
It is. Oh, yeah. People are... you would not believe how many podcasts there are about wrestling.
Oh, yeah. My kids, they go every chance they get.
Mm-hmm. Les has talked about it several times on the show.
Yeah.
He goes.
Don't you go to wrestling, though?
I go to both.
You go to both? Okay.
Because my university was one of the top wrestling schools, still is, in the nation.
Sweet.
Very cool.
In fact, they have a match coming up here in a couple of weeks out at the ballpark.
Cool.
In Irving. And on the card is the 2 collegiate teams and also the American and Russian teams. Or not Russian, Iranian.
So that's kind of a weird combo for today.
That's interesting.
Well, they're gearing up for the Olympics, so this is the chance they are going to do. The collegians are actually vying for position for national championship.
Sweet.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun to the biggest extent.
Yeah, that's a lot different than the stuff that's on Friday night TV. No soap opera, no drama, just sport.
Just a bunch of guys and girls these days in
unitards,
flashy costumes. Well, I was thinking of the prime time stuff, the stuff that she showed, like the pay-per-views and all of that. They've got costumes. Those are not unitards. Those are costumes, and they have microphones and all of that stuff. You get down to the unitard thing, and you're talking local stuff, and I mean there's a big market for that too.
Yeah.
There's still a bustling scene. As far as I know, there's still a bustling scene here in Dallas area.
Yeah, there is. Actually, that's where the kids go. It's not WWE. What's the other one? Maybe it is WWE in Dallas.
AEW?
Something.
EWE?
But it's not the WWF with the
World Wildlife Fund?
Yeah, no, see, I know nothing about this stuff.
EW?
The ooh?
The ew?
Ew.
EWE. There's a bunch of female sheep running around out there. I don't know.
No, that's me when I'm like, oh, they're sweating and touching each other. Ew. No, we used to enjoy like the Von Erichs and stuff. Now, see that they were both, I believe. They were both wrestling and wrestling. They did both. What, were they all wrestling? Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, they were the local good guys, is what they were.
Yeah.
They were the heroes most of the time.
Baby faces.
Yeah.
But they were in a different category than like the Gravedigger and Junkyard Dog and what was it, the Peacemaker?
Well, again, the Von Erichs were local, and all of those folks you're talking about were more on the national scene.
Okay.
They were the ones that were doing it. They were on tour when they showed up, so they weren't there every weekend. Yeah. The Von Erichs were there. There were some of them somewhere every weekend for a long time. But the other guys were touring the country before they had pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And someone seemed concerned about 40 minutes being spent on showers.
Interesting.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Just to remind everybody, we're all in Texas, so we're Texans, and wrestling is.
And it somehow always turns back to wrestling. Is that where you're going with this? I don't think so. No, we were talking about live performances.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there.
From the fake to the real.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they were if Mo had really been poking Shemp's eyeballs every time he did that, Shemp would have been blind within a week.
Yeah.
It was obviously not. He was obviously not hurting his brother.
Yeah.
They both were professionals. They both had been doing it for decades. They knew what they were doing. It looked good. They made it look good on film, and that's really all that mattered.
I wish somebody would explain that to my brother-in-law, and I'm glad I wear glasses because he does that all the time. all the freaking time.
Well, you got to put your hand up in front of your nose to block them.
right.
That's what you got to do. Come on.
Well, it'd be good if you see it coming, and it's always whoop, 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 whoop.
Maybe
Like,
you should
dude.
wear your glasses more if you can't see that coming. Jeez. It's coming right at your eyeballs. Come on now.
No, him and Brandon need to wear a freaking bell around their neck. They're like so quiet and like really softly walk in the house. So we have hardwood floors. You walk across the floor, you hear it, but not them two. So
Okay. So how many times on this show have you mentioned your ADHD? And so how distracted are you most of the time? Come on. On a scale of 1 to holy crap, how distracted are you most of the time? You're not hard to sneak up on. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Hence the bell.
Mm-hmm. Stooges, huh?
Yep. Yeah, I said he had a good run, a long run.
Yep.
And of course, next week we'll tell you about the others. If you're lucky.
Wow.
Dang. Didn't realize there was gonna be pressure involved here. Jeez.
We're gonna put it behind a paywall.
Oh God, yeah, right. I don't think anybody in any of our immediate families would even pay for that. So, nah. It's free.
No, my sister might.
Only if you threatened her.
Yep.
Again.
Shout out, today's her birthday.
Yay.
Today, or today when it drops today?
Well, today. But she knows.
Yes, I hope she knows when her birthday is. Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts from you, Les? Can you bail us out here? No?
Notice he's not giving us a shot, Liz. Do you notice that?
I'm sorry, but it is dug too deep for my savior capacity.
We're beyond saving. Okay.
We were beyond saving 280 episodes ago. What are you talking about?
Always have to have hope.
Because hope floats.
Oh, God.
Anywho, any final thoughts before we take a break?
No, I think we final thoughted this to death already.
Yep.
Yeah, especially after the 30-minute wrestling discussion. So
couldn't have been more than 14.
Yeah.
At least not when the show airs.
I'm not ruling anything out.
And on that note, we'll be right back. And we're back. We're still not doing picks. We're actually going to be replacing our picks section with a new feature. It'll be starting up here the 1st of March, so it should be fun. Should be interesting. Stand by for that. If you want to check out our previous comic book picks, you go to the website www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. There's a page specifically set up for those, or while you're downloading our other episodes, we have them in our show notes. You can look there as well. Any special shout-outs or mentions this week?
No, I don't think so.
No.
None for me, thanks.
Okay. We will move on to our regular shout-outs. I want to thank Pop Goes the Culture Podcast Network for allowing us to be part of a great group of fellow podcasts. We'll have a link in the show notes so you can check those guys out. Thank y'all very much. Also want to recommend that you check out the fine men and women who make up Podern Family, who've been so kind enough to spread the word of the fellowship. by retweeting our links. And you can find them on Twitter. Just do a search, #PodernFamily. Just scroll through whatever catches your attention. Click on that link. Please download that episode, and I hope you have a good time listening to them. Thank you, guys, as always. Manny the Martyr supplies our music for our podcast. We want to thank them for being so cool to allow us to do that. There will be a link in the show notes where you can check out their fine work. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We value your feedback. Any questions, comments, suggestions, complaints, observations, what have you, please send them our way. There are several ways you can do that. Our email address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, or you can go to the website and go to the About Us page, and there is a contact form that you can fill out. Social media, we are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. We're obviously on Twitter, @FellowshipGeeks. If you like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, Mike can be found @MikeyGeek. Liz can be found @LN_geek. Les may or may not be found @FakeLesWebster. And I can be found @TomTCGeek. And from wherever you download our episodes, if you would be so kind as to rate and review our show, it would be greatly appreciated. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate you listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We do appreciate the support as always. Until next time, geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook @The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter @FellowshipGeeks. Until next time,